everyone. Welcome to Forum Friday. Let's welcome Mark. Hi, Mark.
Hi, everybody. Making sure I was live.
Yeah. Um, how has it been going in the forums?
Excellent. Actually, it's been the most activity we get is really on Facebook, and there's been lots of conversations. And what is really nice to see is not only that we're getting plenty of interesting questions, but we see various members jumping in with opinions and suggestions and more questions and supporting each other. So it's not just left up to you, me, and Richard to answer the questions. So that is really the intent of it all, and
Yeah.
it's really going really well, right? So there's some really neat stuff going on.
I love to
um
see people like Jim Little and Jose Lopez
yes, absolutely.
and
Yeah,
Harrison Helmut just chiming in. It helps when the community gives back and
yeah,
provide more ideas and more solutions.
yeah. And that way, people don't feel like they're alone, that they're in this alone. They really have a sense that we're a family, that we can help each other out, right?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
So let's cover some questions that are going on there today.
Well, one that's been going on for a little while, that is really been quite interesting journey, and it's fun to watch it develop. Is we had a member join who is a culinary chef in South Africa, and he is working on developing a like sort of an extended shelf life hamburger bun for his restaurant chain, and trying to, so he's not doing massive quantities, but he's doing enough that he's production, and trying out different things with potato starch and potato flour, and different processes, and understanding sponge and dough. And he's been really good at taking the advice and methodically working through different things step by step,
Yeah.
because that's what you have to do. It's as one member commented on some of their things. Oh, they got their situation solved by good old fashioned trial and error. Well, that's what science is a lot of times, trial and error. I mean, it's like when Edison invented the light bulb, he did 999 trials, and on the thousandth one, that's when we had a light bulb. So, um,
Yeah, and it also
so
helps when the person asking the question provides information that we can
yes,
use.
yes.
It's
The
really hard to help solve, peer-to-peer questions if the person just say, I need the solution, and that's no because.
Yes, yeah, and yeah, and this gentleman in South Africa was really good at providing us with a lot of detail. He even shared his formula at one point too, to make sure in case we saw anything that he wasn't aware of. And it's like I said in recently in the Wisdom Wednesday, talking about product development. I always harken back to these idioms, or other things, like they always say that Lincoln once said that if he had an hour to fell a tree, he would spend 45 minutes sharpening his axe. And that's
Mhm.
what we end up doing then, is we're spending those 45 minutes sharpening our axe by getting all the questions sorted out. And if you can provide us with all of that detail, all of the information as to what's going on and what you're trying to accomplish and things like that, then you're giving us a sharp axe, and we can cut that tree down in no time, right? But if you give us limited information, well, then we have to first dig. We have to sharpen the axe first, and then we can get to the heart of the matter. And I mean, both are fun, but it depends on how quickly you want in your information, right? So,
Correct.
if you have patience, give it to us a spoonful at a time, right? So
So, what else is happening on there?
there was one conversation also taking place where was talk about whether calcium propionate might be harmful to human health in consuming it as a preservative used a lot in breads and baked goods and other foods, right? And there's another question on a similar one. I think it's potassium sorbate or something like that. There are sometimes research studies that are done by certain universities and so on, but it's often difficult to read between the line to understand what their motivation is in terms of why they embarked on this. Using common sense, when the amounts that they are suggesting could be harmful to human health, they would never be used in a baked product because one, it's if you go beyond good manufacturing practices, you're doing more harm to your product than any good.
Correct.
Um, and it's going to be expensive because these
Yeah.
chemicals aren't cheap, right?
Yeah.
And so there's other reasonings that they may be investigating in this that has not always made clear. So sometimes people stumble on scientific papers, don't understand what they're reading, and start conspiracy theories. And
Correct.
so we need to always be mindful of why are we asking this question and why are they doing the research.
Yeah, I recorded a Ask Dr. Lin video on calcium. Is calcium propionate safe?
Mm-hmm,
And it's on YouTube if you are interested. It's got one of the highest views ever.
mm-hmm,
And because it appears on the first page of Google, when you type in calcium propionate harmful, right?
mm-hmm.
So my video pops out, right? So
Good.
I talk about how it breaks down into calcium and
Mm-hmm,
propionic acid, and it's being
mm-hmm,
excreted in the body. And then I
mm-hmm.
have like these really hateful comments on YouTube.
Yeah,
But I've got really thick skin, so I can handle
yeah.
comments and I will fight back if anyone just basically shoots me with conspiracy theories.
Yeah, and unfortunately, some of the culture of the pandemic and stuff has made everybody think that they are somehow a knowledgeable researcher in these things, and it's unfortunate. But I mean, it's been around. It's nothing new. I mean, there's the Psy Babe is actually pretty good, but the Food Babe, she's out to lunch, right?
Well, there's still the
Uh,
farm babe too. I follow the farm babe and she's really
yeah,
fun. I,
mm-hmm,
I, I
mm-hmm,
love what she presents. And with this whole vegan trend thing, I really don't think the meat industry is going to lose that much business. If anything, the plant-based protein is going to help with meeting the protein needs of a vastly growing population.
yeah,
So she shared a lot of information on the vegan trend, on meat, and how meat is inhumanely produced as suggested by certain groups out there, right? So,
mm-hmm.
so I follow Farm Bait, and if you don't, you should too,
Yes,
on
absolutely, yeah,
Facebook and Twitter.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, because I mean, if anything, actually, the all indications are that plant-based protein is really going to help promote that we will have better quality meat in the future, because it is as people become more aware, and also as then animals become treated differently, more selectively. And it is one of these things, as with the haves and haves not. I mean, meat is becoming more and more expensive.
Yep.
And bear in mind that if you just look at the main feed items being soybean and corn, is that it takes about 9 pounds of soybean to produce 1 pound of protein when you're feeding cattle, right? Whereas, of course, if you take a pound of soybean, you have zero 0.8 pounds of protein right away,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's very little, right, in terms of processing there. So that is all improving and stuff. And yeah, the big trend right now is really, I mean, plant protein has been around for a long, long time. The difference today and the last, I'd say, about 4 or 5 years is this trying to emulate the meat-like textures and appearances, right? To the point that where the Impossible Foods one, I believe, is the one that they actually even use beet juice extract to simulate the color of bloody meat, right?
Wow.
So they are definitely not targeting vegans because they're not interested in seeing blood coming out of their burger.
I don't know. I don't
it's
know.
Yeah, the
No,
flexitarian market.
some people are vegan for health reasons, right? Like
Yes. Oh
the
yeah. They yeah
terrible
yeah.
E. coli
Mm,
interaction, and they're like, all of a sudden,
mm.
I'm not eating any meat ever.
Yeah, and I mean, and as we understand more ourselves, is how things, how we digest foods and stuff, and what is healthier for us, and so on. Of course, meats are very high in saturated fats, most of them, right? So what sometimes people don't pay attention to is that the vegan burgers, like so many of these faux meat, the plant-based trends, are actually higher in fat than their meat counterparts, because to overcome that mouthfeel and everything, they need a little bit more fat there, right? So
Yeah,
they're not necessarily healthier for you. So it's that's where as consumers we're all learning. It's a slow process to educate the consumers, because it's not like you can say you can't mandate them to go back to school and learn nutrition. We can't even mandate them to wear masks. I mean, come on.
yeah, I can't mandate anybody in this country. All right, so what other questions do we have?
The other one that was really interesting is generating a lot of dialogue is sanding. There's a gentleman who is producing hamburger buns on an automated type of line, and they have two different sizes and two slightly different formulas. One of them is got high in saturates in the fat system. The other one lower saturates. But the main thing seems to be the cut size in terms of the different weight drops. So if you're cutting at the same speed and dropping a much larger bun, you're going to be too green. You're going to be underproofed. You're going to invite a whole bunch of other issues that
Correct.
is then going to give you this problem where you get this sanding of the heels on the line. So really, the thing is that is just to slow it down on the bigger buns is most likely. We haven't heard
Correct.
back from him on that, but
I
there's been a
really,
number of things.
I've only seen sending of heels on speeds that are higher than 90 cuts a minute.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because when you're pushing the throughput so much, sometimes someone on the line overlooks something,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the transfer speeds are not meshed up. And when you transfer speed from one conveyor to another conveyor, or from the depanner to the cooling line, if those are not matched up, you are going to get heel sending.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the thing about this is you can get away with it with emulsifiers. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Jose said that. You can get
Yes.
away
Yeah.
with it with, with
Monodiene
emulsifiers like
SSL. Yeah.
mono and dye,
Yeah.
datum, those two mainly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But because we're going onto the clean label, right? And then people are like moving things in and out, they forget
Yep.
these things, and then they all of a sudden, oh, we want to go higher speed, let's go from a 95 to 100 cuts per minute,
Mm-hmm.
not understanding, not thinking that, hey, I already removed my emulsifiers, my margin of error has decreased, and
Mm-hmm.
could have caused that heel sending.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you need to look at it as a whole. You can't just take things out of the formula. You can't just increase the cuts. Some of your product quality is very dependent on the cuts per minute.
Yep.
And I've always said that because if your cuts per minute is above 90, 100, closer to 110, you are going really, really fast. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
fine. Okay. I mean, we have been baking this way for many, many years
Mm-hmm.
using datum, SSL, potassium bromate going at 110. But once you take up and go into clean label system and you're still going at 110, there is a problem there.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope people think about this and think about ways that you could possibly give the dough more machining strength, be it more oxidizing agents, being more fermentation, and proofing time. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
when you increase your output, you tend to increase the temperature in the proofer, give it less proof. So
Yeah.
you're like, this is all you're gonna get, little dope ball. Now
Yeah.
perform for me, right? So
Mm-hmm.
my whole ideology about this is, what did you change? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's not an ingredient issue.
Yes, and you need to, as you're basically saying, is they need to look at the whole, the bigger picture, and that one little change, such as adjusting the cuts per minute, causes a chain reaction of so many different things that have to be looked at and taken into consideration, and
Absolutely.
really before making that change is basically hypothesize. Okay, like what does my formula look like? Why do I have these things in my formula? Why did we put them there in the first place? Of course, there's been changeover in many places over the years. You may not be privy to the exact information, but you can conclude if you are not really extremely high in fats in your dough, why else would you have emulsifiers there, right? I mean, why are you putting it in there, right? And so those types of things. So it's looking at evaluating everything from the formula, from mixing times, resting times, any bulk fermentations, anything else like that. You've got to take that all into account, because if you were doing even just a 40-minute bulk before you divide or something, that'll all of a sudden be lost as soon as you increase the cuts by maybe 5 or 10 per minute, because it just goes through the dough that much faster. It doesn't get that rest anymore.
That's true. That's
Yep.
true. Well, do we have any more questions that is worthy of discussion here?
I think that's it for now. There's quite a few things. I encourage everyone to join us at the forums and on Facebook. It is a private group, so you just have to answer a couple simple questions, and we let you in pretty quickly. There's a number of us who are admins and letting people in to join as quickly as we can. So it's not like you sign up and have to wait a week in some of these places, right?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and we are coming off of the famous Harvest Moon Festival, or Fall Moon
Yes,
Festival, right?
we
So
are.
that's something that you, I'm sure, are
I
very involved
celebrated.
in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this week I made mooncakes.
Mooncakes, yeah.
These are red bean filled mooncakes, and it is made in a mold and just baked. It's a twice baked method, basically.
Hmm.
And don't judge. The interior
Oh, it looks
is
nice.
a
Yeah.
little bit crumbly because I didn't add
Yeah.
too much fat and sugar in there.
Hmm.
I like my mooncakes a little bit less sweet and fattening, but I gave it a little bit more dough because I
Hmm.
really like the dough.
Hmm.
So happy Mooncake Festival, everyone.
That's cool. Yeah, and I could see the dough is nice and brown all the way through.
Yeah,
Is that?
it's made just of four ingredients. We're talking about all-purpose flour, high fructose corn syrup, and yes, I use high fructose corn syrup because I love high fructose corn syrup. There's nothing wrong with it. Um, Oil and
Hmm.
lye water. So there's no regular tap water in here. It's just lye water and just a
Hmm.
little bit of it just to get it, malleable enough. But the high fructose corn syrup is what gives it its um, elasticity.
Hmm.
So basically, it is a very simple formula, and there's no leavening in here. But can you guess what is the function of the lye water in here, Mark?
Well, lye is used to etch the protein, so it helps give it a nice caramelized kind of brownish color, and that's why I asked while it was brown all the way through nicely like that. That happens sometimes when there's excess baking soda, which can also be slightly alkaline, right?
Yep.
And so the alkalinity of the lye is what is basically producing that, and it's making it nice and brown, just like classic pretzels,
Yep.
and or bagels. Bagels are, well, not everybody uses lye in the bagel, But I make my own sodium hydroxide, and I use just a little bit into the bagel water because it
Yeah.
gives it a nice golden
Yeah.
color that way, right? It
Yeah.
gives it a really beautiful color, and it provides a very unique flavor too.
I love
It's
the
very
flavor
interesting.
of
Yeah.
lye treated wheat flour.
Yes. Now, lye is caustic, so you have to
It
be
is.
careful. And
Don't eat too much of it.
where do you get do you buy it off of Amazon or
No, we actually lye and alkaline water is very frequently used in the Asian diet.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I
we
didn't know
use
that.
it in a lot of products like glutinous rice flour,
Oh, yes, that makes sense. Yeah.
gluten flour dumplings,
Hmm.
and just a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know why it's so popular. I've never really dug into it, but it is frequently used in the Asian diet, and
Hmm.
we can find it in the Asian supermarkets.
Well, it's very interesting in diving into some of the history of these things sometimes. And if I may digress very briefly, as two of my favorites are among the that fit with this, as we mentioned, bagels and pretzels, right?
Yeah.
And bagels actually they originate really from Poland, as many people are not aware. There's a whole other reason where the Jewish attribute, and there's a great article in the Atlantic that covers this in great detail. But basically, there was a great friendship between Poland and Austria, and the king of Austria was very fond of horses, riding, and playing polo. And so when he came for a visit, the bakers made a bread in his honor that was to resemble the stirrup of the horse's stirrup from the saddle. And a stirrup in German is called a Bügel. And so Bügel became, vocalized into bagel because the Polish people couldn't speak German, obviously, that well either. And then it sort of ended up becoming round. That's one. But the other one that fits with the lies story is interesting. And I always knew that pretzels, where the pretzel came from, was developed by monks who took some scrap pieces of bread and rolled it out. And the pretzel is actually supposed to resemble arms that are praying
Oh.
because this is how they prayed. They used to fold their arms to pray. But the reason they are dipped in lye is complete coincidence and accidental, and is that they were getting ready to load the oven with some pretzels. And they had a cleaning solution beside the oven getting ready to scrub it that was full of lye. And some of them dropped into the lye, and they just picked them out, fished them out, put them back on the tray, and baked it. And then they liked so
Ooh, that
much how
tastes
they
really
turned out that's how pretzels ended up being dunked in lye before baking. So
I like
it's
that story. Whether it's
yeah, it's
truthful or not, I like that story.
I got it from a historian who said, yeah, who basically said he had researched it and that is supposed to be true, right? So,
Okay.
uh,
So anyway, what did you bake this week, Mark?
I baked a few things. I have some ingredients that I'm cleaning up my freezer and things like that. So I had some bananas that were going kind of brown, and so what we do with bananas when they're going brown is I make banana bread, right? And so I made this nice whole grain banana bread because I had some whole wheat flour to use up.
So did you use
And
like 100%?
no, I use 50% or
Oh, okay.
51%. I use
Okay.
51% so I can call it whole grain. um, and I
Okay.
also used in here. I have walnuts, and I have what else did I put? I have dried apples and dried dates. I mixed into here as well, so it's got lots of fiber. And that
That's really good
I,
breakfast
yeah,
bread.
and I don't have it. Mine is not very high in sugar, so the dates and the dried fruit help add a little bit of sweetness as well that way.
Yeah.
And as you can, if you could see the top, one of the things I like to do, you see this little split is
Right.
nice and straight.
Right.
Is the simple way to do this at home is I use either a plastic scraper or a knife, and I brush it with oil on both sides and dip it into the center. So where you dip it into the center of the loaf and pull it out, that oil is now there, and it prevents it from closing up during the bake, and it rises up nicely in the center and gives you nice, perfect crack, right?
Oh, that's a
It's a
great
nice little
tip.
trick. In my apprenticeship, we used to make pound cakes where we had to carefully pull it out of the oven after about 5 6 minutes and take a sharp knife and carefully cut the
Wow.
top, right, and making sure you slide it back in without banging it, right. So it was
Wow.
always a challenge.
Yeah.
The other thing I have here is I had some puff pastry to use up, and so I did something that is sort of semi Asian. You might be familiar with
Yeah, it's an egg
the
tart.
the egg tart, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a puff pastry shell, is what I did, and the only thing I did different with the custard is I used milk and cream with the custard, right? Whereas the Asian dantat is just water, right? It's water, sugar, and eggs.
I don't know. I
Some
don't
put
know
a
how to
li-
make that
yeah, some put a little bit of milk in, but most of them are water based, right? They came out really nice. My wife approves, right?
Oh,
So
that's
she
good.
said she said the filling's not the same, but it tastes good.
Oh,
So,
that's good. I
and
trust
then
her
some
taste.
other puff pastry. I made little apple
Oh,
strudels,
apple
right?
strudel.
So
Yeah.
it's a little
Oh, that's
miniature
good.
apple strudel.
Did you
And
laminate your doughs by hand?
yes, yeah, I
Ah,
laminate by
okay.
hand, and I do a 3 4 3 4, right? So I get 144 fat layers, 145 dough layers, right? And it puffs up nicely, and then I use the scraps to make palmiers, right? Or palmier, or some people also call them, in German they call them pig's ears, or some people call them butterflies, right? So all the same thing.
All them from years.
Yeah, and there's my one of my neighbors commented they enjoyed them, so how good they taste, and I say, "Yep, butter and sugar make for good flavors." So
Yeah. That's a pretty simple one.
yeah,
Well, Mark, thank you for coming on today on Forum Friday. And if any of you have any more questions, go join us on our baking industry professional pages on LinkedIn and Facebook.
yep.
It's really happening at Facebook. I love the conversations on there. So if you're on there, thank you for joining us. And one more piece of news, we just launched our paid academy, and now you can learn about flower science and
Yep.
get a certification for it.
Yep.
Okay?
Mhm.
So join us at bakerpedia.com/academy. Go check our Brett 1, 2, and 3 modules out. More are coming and in
Mhm.
the process of being published, but go start there.
And don't forget, October 7th, we have our free cake shelf life extension seminar. We're
Yeah,
getting lots of questions on cake shelf life, so
much needed.
please
Much
attend that.
needed.
That'll help answer a lot of your questions.
Correct. All right,
Great.
everyone. Thank you for joining us, and
All
we
right.
will see you next week.
All right. Have a
Bye,
great
Mark.
weekend, everyone. Bye.